Шановні колеги, шановні учасники конференції, я сподіваюся, що поки ми будемо обов'язково вступну частину проводити, наша кількість збільшиться, тому що ще не всі приєднались. Ну, а тих, хто приєднались, я радий бачити, радий вас вітати. Вже в четверте Криворізький державний педагогічний університет, виступаючи одним із організаторів міжнародної конференції зі сталого майбутнього, збирає науковців, які займаються дослідженнями в галузі екохімії, раціонального використання та збереження природних ресурсів. Нам приємно бачити сьогодні нові прізвища, нові обличчя учасників нашої секції конференції. Приємно розуміти, що ви знайшли можливість таки прийняти участь у цьому науковому заході. Ми щиро сподіваємося, що ви також отримаєте задоволення від сьогоднішньої зустрічі, від можливості представити результати своїх наукових досліджень, обговорити їх, поспілкуватись з колегами з різних куточків не лише України, а й світу. І оскільки наша конференція має статус міжнародної, і її відеозапис потім буде розміщено у вільному доступі, він може бути переглянутий науковцями з різних країн пізніше, то ми нагадуємо, що все ж таки основною мовою спілкування на конференції у нас є англійська. Рідною мовою більшості авторів та доповідачів нашої сьогоднішньої секції є, звісно, українська. Тому ми з розумінням ставимось до можливості спілкування саме рідною для нас мовою, але будемо вимушені обов'язково перекладати репліки українською на англійську. Тому велике прохання до спікерів, до тих, хто буде відповідати на питання, робити доповідь і так далі. Якщо ви можете все ж таки говорити англійською, то, будь ласка, беріть участь в обговоренні одразу саме нею. Це просто дозволить нам зекономити час на відповідний переклад і дасть можливість встигнути більше обговорити, більше поспілкуватись. Якщо ж все-таки будуть суттєві такі проблеми, от як, наприклад, у вашого покірного слуги в цьому сенсі, то в мене є співведучі, це Тетяна Альохіна і Сергій Олексійович Семеряков, які будуть допомагати нам порозумітись, якщо виникнуть проблеми саме з англійською. Ну і також дуже прошу вас бути активними, не соромитись задавати питання. Будемо сподіватися, що все у нас сьогодні вдасться без збоїв. І бажаю всім вам успіху, наснаги. Давайте починати. Так, Тетяна Миколаївна.
Good day, dear colleagues. I am glad an opportunity to present our research to you. The topic of my speech is the current state of the Southern Bukh River mouth ecosystem. The Southern Bukh is one of the largest rivers of Ukraine, which constantly experiences significant anthropogenic pressure due to the high regulation of the river, large-scale plowing of coastal areas, dense settlement lot. The current state of the Southern Bukh mouth ecosystem is formed under the influence of the multi-purpose usage of the river. One of the most powerful factors affecting the estuary part of the river is shipping and the associated periodic dredging of shipping channels. The Bud-Dnipro estuary channel serves as the entrance for the ships to Mykolaiv port and a number of ports in the estuary. But since the beginning of Russia's full-scale military aggression, the water area in the estuary of the Southern Bukh catastrophically affected by bombing and shelling. So, the aim of our research was to characterize the pre-war state of the Southern Bukh River mouth ecosystem using a wide range of indicators, including lithological, hydrochemical, and hydrobiological ones. The presented materials are based on the research data of the Southern Bukh lower part in the spring and summer of 2021, analysis of research data of 2012, and comparison with literature data. The sampling points were located along profiles that cross the investigated object. We researched samples from two profiles. First, near the Port Olvia, second, across the southern Bukh, between villages Parutine, Limani. The modern sediments of the southern Bukh River mouth represent mainly silt. Extracted sediment, which is picked up due to permanent dredging work in the southern Bukh River mouth, is transported to local soil dumps, where it forms continuous silt deposits. The results of the sediment granulometric composition testify to the transformation of lagoonal sediment accumulation. The data you can see on the diagram. Areas along the shipping channels have sediments represented mainly by speleity. Finely dispersed materials is constantly stored by ships and dispersed over a long distance. In addition, shipping channel sections contain a large amount of industrial waste. Chemical analysis of sediment samples made it possible to obtain the following data on chemical elements pollutants. Research results show that, with the exception of one sample, the content of elements pollutants in all profile samples didn't exceed the maximum allowable concentration. An important factor influencing the process of forming chemogenic and bioorganic complex of sediments is the saturation of the water object with oxygen. One of the indicators of aerobic-anaerobic shift in balance toward reduction can be displacement of the ratio of iron oxides in the sediments, namely the predominance of iron oxide 2 over iron oxide 3. A turbidity in natural water is an important ecological factor. Significant turbidity in certain areas is caused by anthropogenic factors, dredging, shipping, and dumping. The concentration of suspended particles in the Port Olvia profile water ranged from 7 and 6 to 12 and 6 mg for decimeter cubes, under the conditions of the maximum allowable concentration of 0.75 mg for cube decimeters. The concentration of total phosphorus, according to our research in the water area of the Port Olvia profile, varied in the range of 1 and 4 to 3 and 2 mg for cube decimeters. You can also see the concentration of ammonium, nitrogen, and nitrates and nitrites. The area of the southern mouth is a transition zone, the continuum between fresh waters and coastal marine waters. So, in the water area of the southern Bukh, lower reaches, below the city of Mykolaiv, a transitional community is formed consisting of freshwater and marine species that are on the edge of their ecological ranges. The phytoplankton community composition of the southern Bukh estuary system fluctuates from 50 to 60 species in the context of average long-term indicators, which are represented mainly by cyanobacteria, diatoms, and green algae. Cyanobacteria play the dominant role in the formation of summer phytoplankton biomass. Studies of high aquatic plant in the mouth area of the southern Bukh River showed a depleted species composition of floristic communities, which form two plant complexes, coastal, halophytes, and aquatic, free-floating. And so, conclusions. The present and comprehensive research can be considered the current pre-war state of the southern Buchmouth ecosystem. The results of the conducted research are assessment of the sediments features of the researched river section, assessed water conditions and characteristic of the group of hydrobionts, appearance of reducing condition spots in sediments, increased turbidity, change of hydrochemical conditions, reducing of some fodder species. This is a short list of current anthropogenic transformation of southern Buchmouth ecosystem. The first and urgent measures to revitalize the mouth of the southern Buch should be actions to eliminate and mitigate the consequences of hostilities. Further, revitalization measures should be aimed at preserving biodiversity, which is possible under the conditions of maintaining the normal state of water and sediments in the southern Buch, especially in the transitional estuarine zone. Thank you for your attention.
My apologies for the too early start. My very fast fingers were too fast at this time. I'm happy to introduce our colleagues, Tatiana Alekina, and her exciting speech. Really, this year we had a lot of damages in not only in Southern Buch Delta reservoir and also in our city. Rocket missile attack last fall to the Kryvyi Rih reservoir damaged the place of water preservations, and these damages were in so fast as my fingers were corrected by the iron ore in massive explosions in the estuary of Ingolets River, etc. So before the questions regarding your this tale, could you please characterize the current state of the post damages in our city, Ingolets River, this year?
Thank you for your question. Really, this year we don't research our river because war situation and absent opportunity to scientific research in our water streams and Ingolets too. Of course, do you know that low stream of our river was deoccupied only in winter, so and now in different part, especially in lower part of the Ingolets River, is a quite danger zone. So real scientific research we can't make this year, but of course, that action that was in last year had two main consequences. First, good for river, because we have a great massive of water from Karachanivsky reservoirs that in a short period of time stream by a river, and this action was really good purification, really, for river. But a second and bad consequence, it's destroyed dam. And now our dam, without a special I don't know, special door for water. I don't know, it's a hydro-technical term, but now we had not opportunity to free
to regulate streams, etc. What about the super extra mineralizations?
After this catastrophic, water mineralization was low, really. But now, after spring seasonal process, and after add to water high mineralized water from Svistanova, level of water soluble salts more than 7 grams per liter. It's catastrophically, yeah. And this me and my student made in our laboratory. So it's a really catastrophic situation. So
thank you, Tatiana. One more question, if it's possible, regarding your investigation of Southern Book estuary. Which of the studied sediment components could be affected by the results of martial arts, military operations, etc.? Can this impact be significant in Southern Book?
I need to say that when we are talking about current research about sediments, we mean not last year or year before. It's some period of time near 10 maybe years, because sediments need to process of sedimentation, and we research this part of higher part of this sediment. War actions, bombing, shelling, etc., of course, has own I don't know effects, but in context of hydrobiological and hydrochemical process, quite difficult to say about these effects, because it's some points, and we don't know what these contents of these bombs, etc. And it's at first a problem to shipping maybe, and dredging. Of course, shipping channel, dredging of shipping channel, because need very it may be very dangerous, such work, dredging, but about sediment, about all hydro system in a general, it's quite difficult to answer this question.
Thank you. What about studies on chemosynthetic bacteria or another organism in the sediments?
Excuse me, but this question was not topic of our investigation. Only hydrobiomes such as plankton, phytoplankton at higher plants, not microbiotic, not microbiomes.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Other questions to this talk? All welcome. You can freely use your own language. We will try to translate.
Excuse me, could you repeat your question? Last remark?
Not a question, it's a remark that our participants can use both English and Ukrainian in their questions. We will try to translate.
Yeah, I try. Of course, I try. Maybe, oh, yeah. Excuse me. Шановні колеги, скажіть, будь ласка, чи потрібен переклад? То я перекладу запитання та відповіді, які мені було надано. Чи є запитання? Ви можете звертатися українською, я буду їх якби синхронно перекладати для запису та відповідати, якщо вони стосуються мене, або якщо там будуть до вас. Немає?
No, any remarks? So I think we can.
Голова дякує. Так, і наступна доповідь.
Yes, according to the program, the next talk should be a study of the energy parameters of the system solar panels, solar inverter, electric networks. The speakers were Alexander Plakty and Denis Gordienko. At the moment, we can see, yes, Alexander Andreevich, we are welcome you. So I start your video presentation.
Of the conference. To your attention is presented study on the topic. Study of the energy parameters of the system, solar panels, solar inverter, electric network. The generation and consumption of electricity in the world is constantly growing. At the same time, the generation of electricity from alternative energy source, including solar photovoltaic panels, is also growing rapidly. In 2022, total electrical power generation of all solar panels was about 716 gigawatt-hour. That is approximately 3% of the world's total electricity. The conversion of sunlight into electric current with the help of the photoelectric effect occurs in solar photovoltaic cells. To implement the function of maximum power selection from the solar panel in the DC-DC converter. It is necessary to ensure the implementation of the input current value adjustment for maximum power selection from the solar panel. The purpose of the study is to obtain scientific result of the process transferring electrical energy from solar panels through a hybrid solar inverter to a three-phase electrical network. One of the most important characteristics of solar panels is its current voltage characteristic, the shape of which depends on the level of solar radiation and temperature. For an example, consider the volt-ampere characteristic of the solar panel type ERA 317W24V, figure 1. At the same time, the current voltage characteristics of the solar panel largely depend on the temperature of the panel, while an increase in temperature reduces the generated power, figure 2. The dependence of the power of solar panel on consumed current is shown in figure 3. It can be seen that the solar panels has a point of generation of maximum power, which is determined by amount of current consumed by the solar panel. Determining the maximum power generation point can be done by exact calculation by polynomial approximation of the solar panel current voltage characteristics and using solar radiation and temperature sensors. Thus, by regulating the solar panel current, it is possible to obtain the maximum power that is functionally realized by the semiconductor converter that takes power from the solar panel. Converters, called solar inverters or hybrid inverters, perform the functions of selection electrical energy from solar panels, operating in the maximum power generation mode and ensuring the transmission of electrical energy to the general industrial electrical network. Figure 4. To implement the function of maximum power selection from the solar panel in the DC-DC converter, it is necessary to ensure the implementation of the input current value adjustment. To determine the parameters of the intensity of the power of electrical energy which is generated in the solar panel, as well as the implementation of the selection maximum tension in the solar panels. A computer simulation model has been developed, which is shown in figure 5. The main parameters of the Matlab model of the power active filter are given in table 1. In the model, the block of solar panels consists of 500 solar panels type Soltec 1STH 215P. Its 15 series modules, 10 parallel strings. The maximum current generated by the block of solar panels is 17.5 ampere. The maximum power generated by the block of solar panels is 1415 volt. The maximum power of a block 500 solar panels is 106.57 kilowatt. At a solar radiation level of 1000 watt per square meter and at a temperature of 25. Current voltage characteristic of said 500 solar panels simulated in Matlab model is shown in figure 6. The control system of the hybrid inverter is implemented on the basis of control system of the power active filter with pulse width modulation, control with the adjustment modulation frequency from 1 to 10 kHz. The structure of the control system implemented in the model is shown in Figure 7. The implementation of the maximum power selection in the hybrid inverter is implemented by controlling the phase current of the solar inverter by setting the modulation coefficient. Transient processes of current, voltage and power of solar panels at the start of solar inverter are shown in Figure 8. As can be seen, the voltage of the block of solar panels increases from zero during startup. As is known, the condition for the implementation of the power factor correction mode and the formation of the sinusoidal form of the generated current is that the voltage in the direct current link of the solar inverters is higher than the amplitude value of the line voltage of the network, into which the energy from the solar panels will be transferred. Therefore, to improve the startup mode of the solar inverter, it is advisable to perform the startup with a precharge capacitor of the inverter to the level of a large amplitude value of the line voltage of network, Figure 9. The power factor in the mode of generating electricity to the electric grids is 0.991. The results of the harmonic analysis of the form the current generated from the solar inverter to the electric grid are shown in Figure 10. As can be seen from Figure 10, the current generated from the solar inverter to the electrical network has a harmonic distortion coefficient equal to 3.63%, and the amplitude value of all harmonics in the spectrum does not exceed 2.4%, which meets the requirements of international standards. The results of polynomial approximation of the energy characteristics of power transistors at a temperature of 25 are given in the following expressions. To calculate the efficiency of the hybrid inverter, the characteristics of the IGBT module type CM1200 DC 44 years with a nominal current of 1200 ampere and a nominal voltage of 1700 volt were taken. The characteristics for which the calculation was given and which determine power losses are shown in Figure 11. The calculation carried out during modeling determined the dependence of the amount of power loss in one power switch of the inverter as a function of the pulse width modulation frequency in Figure 12. Dependence of power losses in the power transistor on the pulse width modulation frequency at a DC link voltage of 1500 volt and a current amplitude of 223 ampere, maximum power point of solar panels. Thus, the efficiency of the hybrid inverter when transferring electricity from the solar panels to the electrical network was from 98.4% at a pulse width modulation frequency of 1 kHz to 92.7% at a pulse width modulation frequency of 6 kHz. The last slide presents the conclusions of the study. Thank you for attention.
Thank you for your talk. Is there any questions to the Олександр Андрійович Плахтій?
Чи є запитання до пана Олександра?
Так, слухаю. Oh, sorry. I hear you.
No, at least I have one question. Yesterday, your and Denise talk at the workshop on sustainable energy attractive a lot of attention. Despite Dr. Artemchuk would like to meet you today, but at the moment he is co-chair in another parallel session. So I would like to ask his question to you. How much will the performance of the system you have developed differ from other types of the system, classical solar panel, solar inverter, electric network?
Потрібно перекладати, чи ви зрозуміли запитання?
No, I understand question. One second. I have short answer and long. I should turn off echo. Oh, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So there are a few types of solar electrical station with DC-DC converter and with only voltage source inverter. Could I share my screen?
A moment, I try to show your presentation again.
Yeah. As I understand, you can see my screen.
Yes.
So most of systems that describe working of solar station have PV. Next, DC-DC converter that allow to work in MPPT mode that allows to get maximum power from solar panels. DC, and then only voltage source inverter that work on the electrical grid. Voltage source inverter. So, function of DC-DC converter in this scheme, MPPT. One second. I have a Word document that describes such system. It's a long answer. Short answer is that our systems allows to work without DC-DC converter, so it's less steps of conversion, so it's improvement of a total efficiency system. Voltage source inverter in this system allow to control DC voltage that get from PV solar panels, and by controlling of DC current that go through solar panels, we can go and work on point of maximum power of solar panel. So our work allows to get out of DC-DC and get bigger efficiency.
Yes. Thank you. An ideal state that without any losses we have some conversion without
No, no, no.
classical station.
Yeah, I have similar. Yeah, we calculated the power losses of transistor and yet not bad efficiency, 95, 98%.
What about the practical implementation? Denise is both a PhD candidate and engineer.
Yeah, I'm also engineer.
When we can see and touch by arms to the ready production.
I work in an oven company, and now it's called Architect. And industrial development, it depends on business. We try to make work with how called this company of your device? EcoFlow. Yeah, and EcoFlow that they working with China's engineers, it's fast and is cheap. So make cheap production of electronic in Ukraine is hard question.
Thank you. Any other questions to Alexander? Any questions, please? No
Чи-
questions?
Чи є ще в когось запитання до Олександра? Мабуть, складні технічні моменти.
Ну, це спеціалізація силової електроніки. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your talk, for your answers. We try to move forward. Our next presentation, the usage of probiotic microorganism in production technology of European grayling fish stock. This talk will be presented by Olga Frunza. Olga, oh yes, we see you. So I will start your video presentation. One.
Allow me to present to your attention the results of work on the topic, the usage of probiotic microorganisms in production technology of European grayling fish stock. European grayling is a prospective object of recreational fishing. However, grayling stocks in the watercourses of Ukraine are significantly depleted nowadays, and population are in a condition of lack, what has led to the inclusion of this species into the Red Book of Ukraine. The reintroduction into nature of artificially obtained fish fry is one of the effective ways to restore the optimal number and structure of rare fish species natural populations, and this in turn will allow in the future to restore the limited exploitation of the stock of these. One of the critical artificial fish reproduction technology links is the transfer of larvae to external nutrition. Namely, on this stage, the highest mortality rates are observed. The usage of live feeds as a starter fodder can significantly improve the situation. Forage organisms, in addition to having high nutritional value, can serve as delivery tools of various targeted products, including probiotics to a fish larvae organism. The aim of the work was to assess the feasibility of probiotic strain Lactobacillus casei IMB B7280 usage, and also the opportunity of using the culture Daphnia magna, grown in the presence of gehellose lipids, within the technology of early feeding of the European grayling Timalus linnaeus 1758. Experimental growing of European grayling larvae took place in 2021 on the state enterprise Trot Hatchery Lopushno. Larvae were reared in 20 by 40 centimeter trays with a water volume of 18 liters. During all the time of experimental growing, the controlled was quality of water. In both control and experimental groups, the initial number of larvae in trays was 500 individuals. On the first stage of experiment, with a duration of 13 days, grayling larvae received corresponding dry forage, biomar, and intact nuclear artemia, and larvae of experimental group, dry forage and nuclear artemia enriched by probiotic microorganisms culture Lactobacillus casei IMB B7218. On the second stage of experiment, with a duration of 7 days, was investigated the expediency of live feeds usage within the technology of feeding grown grayling larvae from individuals which previously got the standard ration without probiotics. The control group of grayling larvae was created, and they were fed with a dry forage biomar, and also research group in which fish got live feeds beside the dry forage, namely Daphnia magna strauss 1820. The initial number of grayling larvae is 200 individuals in each tray. In order to increase the nutritional value of forage organisms, Daphnia was cultivated together with the green microalgae Desmodesmus aromatus. Acceleration of the growth rate of biomass was provided by the addition of trehalose lipids preparation, which was received from the culture fluid of Rhodococcus erythropolis. During the experiment, the water temperature in the trays increased by approximately 2 degrees centigrade, while the concentration of oxygen dissolved in the water changed insignificantly. Figure 1. In general, the quality of water corresponded to the norm. Research results show that grayling larvae, which received encapsulated into Artemia lactobacilli, were characterized by a higher growth rate at all stages. Thus, with the same average initial body weight of 0.02 gram, after 13 days, individuals of the research group were 15% heavier than larvae from the control group, figure 2. The positive effect of using live feeds lies in the fact that they have the necessary set of nutrients for fish, as well as contain their own hydrolytic enzymes, which improve the functional activity of fish larvae digestive tract, increase the level of feeds conversion and their digestibility. All of this contributes to the growth intensification processes of young fish. The introduction of denaturation of European grayling youth contributed to the faster accumulation of fish body weight. Thus, the average daily gain of individuals of the control group amounted 3.1 gram, and the larvae of the research group 4.3 gram, what is 36% more. Figure 3. According to this, combined cultivation of microalgae with feed zooplankton allows to receive live feeds with improved nutritional value. One of the problems of receiving a sufficient amount of live feeds for young fish feeding is the rapid increase of its biomass. However, previous researchers have pointed out that the introduction of biosurfactants speeds up the growth rate of forage zooplankton cultures and also reduces the affected concentration of biocides. Previous researchers have pointed out that the introduction of growing grayling larvae of live feeds biomass grown by co-cultivation with green algae in presence of trehalose lipids intensifies the growth rate of fish larvae mass, as well as contributes to increasing of survival rate of fish of the research group in comparison with the control group of individuals. Figure 4. Based on research results, feeding of European grayling larvae during the period of its transition to external nutrition with the Artemia enriched with Lactobacillus casei IMV B7280 ensures acceleration of growth processes. Introduction of Daphnia magna culture previously received of co-cultivation with microalgae Desmodesmus armatus with addition of trehalose lipids into a growing grayling larvae aeration contributes to reducing the mortality of young fish and accelerating its growth rate. The usage of lactic acid prebiotic microorganisms Lactobacillus casei IMB B7280 strain for encapsulation in Artemia, and also the procedure of cultivation live feeds with microalgae in the presence of biosurfactants may be appropriate for young fish feeding, but the effectiveness of these procedures has to be investigated for each specific species separately. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your talk. I'm glad to both hear and see you and Alexei, two authors of this article. At the moment, our session child, Dr. Nechiporenko, must to help in another parallel session, but he sent me some questions for you. I'm sorry for possible terminology incompletions. I will try to read his questions in Ukrainian, and Tatiana will translate them. The first questions of Pavlo Nechiporenko is: чи не спричиняє використання культури Lactobacillus casei зміни pH, рівня кислотності, скоріш за все, води у рибогосподарствах за рахунок виділення молочної кислоти цими бактеріями?
First, I need to translate this question. The question from Pavlo Nechiporenko. What the added feed affects to a pH of water? Can your lactobacteria change water pH to acid side?
Доброго дня. Українською можна давати відповідь?
Так, звичайно.
Вибачаюся за хвилювання. Протягом періоду досліджень контролювалися фізико-хімічні параметри води на даному господарстві, і критичних показників щодо впливу бактерій лактобацилус не було виявлено на кислотність води в даному господарстві.
Можна?
During research was control the water parameters, and such parameters as pH don't increase. with added lactobacteria. It was answer of Olga. Could I
And
ask you?
Олексій?
Yeah,
Так,
please.
раз перша відповідь українською, то я вже теж не буду себе мучити. Річ в тому, що, як прозвучало в доповіді, не вносилась безпосередньо культура бактерій до риб. Ці бактерії були інкапсульовані в личинки артемів, науплі артемів. Відповідно, вже ось такі, скажімо так, модифіковані в кормовому відношенні живі корма давались рибам. Тому це дозволило запобігти безпосередньому впливу мікроорганізмів на середовище, в якому вирощувалися самі личинки риб.
Щиро дякую.
This feed proposed for fry fish feed was in encapsulated forms, so effects of lactobacteria to water conditions was minimal. Is in general.
Lactobacillus bacteria was encapsulated in brine shrimp nauplea, and this microorganism have not contact with water in which fry fish were. Microorganisms were in leaf feed.
Can I small remark? In one of your slide was diagrams where we can see on the diagrams was notes that was non-capsulated and capsulated forms. What about this moment?
Brine shrimp with encapsulated lactobacillus is experimental feed. Non-encapsulated native brine shrimp nauplea is control group.
Yeah, thank you. And my question, this research has practical aspects. I mean, in which rivers, stream, or only in artificial ponds you release larvae, fry fish?
Thank you for question. This fish fry was restocked in Siret River, yes, Olga, and Черемош.
Черемош, yeah.
Оля, тільки в Сірет чи в Черемош теж заробляли ці личинки?
Сірет, Черемош і Дністер, притоки невеликі, здається, частини.
Зароблялися цими личинками, да? Дякую.
Thank you. Thank you.
Перезвони командиру.
Thank you. One more question from Pavlo Nichipurenko. I'm sorry, but session chair. Again, question in Ukrainian. Чим можна пояснити зниження маси мальків на третій день вигодовування у контрольній групі? Мова йде про рисунок 2. Чи є нормальним такий хід набору маси для цього виду риб? Ну, власне кажучи, цікавить ще додаткове, а це лише на, Харіусі, чи ці подібний ефект можна очікувати на інших видах риб? О, 3 в 1.
The sense of question was why on the third day of feeding fry fish was reduce of mass, of weight, of larvae. It depends on feeding or other aspects of their growing. And this process is typical only for grayling or other fry fish too. It's translation of this question. Українською відповідаєте, як вам зручно?
Так. Ну, якщо подивитися, там якраз, ну, по-перше, личинка на цих ранніх етапах надзвичайно має невелику масу, відповідно, чи вона поїла, чи не поїла, буде впливати, да, істотно. І от якщо ми бачимо, якраз там був скачок температури, зниження, да, ну і відповідно цей ефект проявився на контрольній групі. Якраз ті, які отримували оцю науплі Артемії з мікроорганізмами, да, інкапсульованими, то бачимо, більш плавно пройшло. Але в принципі, тут не можна сказати, що щось там десь істотно худнуло чи піднімалась маса, чи піднімалася ця личинка. В принципі, ми бачимо загальний тренд до того, що маса більш інтенсивно піднімалася саме в експериментальній групі, ті, які отримували живий корм з лактобацилами. Що стосується ефекту на інших видах, ми тестували штами лактобацил, і, зокрема, і цей штам на стерлядь. І, в принципі, теж бачили позитивні моменти щодо того, що пришвидшуються ростові процеси і зменшується смертність у личинок.
About this question, also don't have real answer, because in that day, on third day, was decrease of temperature, a few degrees of temperature, and maybe this factor, ecological factor, was negative effect, but in general, weight of fry fish increase, so such feeding is effective to a growing process of grayling, and also try to make these methods more wide to other kind of fish, such as sterlet, as new innovation methods.
Я дуже дякую, але тут у мене трохи непередбачувані. Я надію, що Ольга вам на подальші відповіді, якщо питання будуть, дасть відповіді. Дякую всім за увагу. Дуже класна конференція.
На все добре.
Дякуємо. Дякуємо.
Many thanks. Any other questions to Olga?
Можливо, ще в когось є запитання до Ольги?
Thank you, Ivana. Thank you. Let me take a next presentation. I see the representative of the OSIS collective, Kanali Yernazar. The name of his talk of gold from the extracted oxidized ore of the Belsa deposit, Republic of Kazakhstan. One moment, I will start his presentation.
Hello, dear participants of the conference. To your attention, I show a presentation on the topic heap leaching of gold from the destructed oxidizers or of the Beso deposit, Abay district, Abay region, Republic of Kazakhstan. Heap leaching technology is increasingly being used to extract metals from poor ores, especially in the gold mining industry, and is characterized by low capital cost compared to other methods. The long-term practice of working with this technology of foreign and Kazakhstan enterprises confirms the higher technical and economic efficiency. However, a big problem is destructured slimy and clay ores, which reduce the seepage of the gold dissolving solution, which reduces the extraction of gold. The purpose of this work is to develop models and indicators of heap leaching of gold from the destructed oxidizers or of the Besu deposit, Kazakhstan, with recommendation for the use on an industrial scale. General view of the ore deposits. The gold-bearing ore of the Besu deposit has been investigated. The technological sample is represented by two types of ores in terms of physical structure: destructed wetting crust and quartz containing strong pieces of ore, the amount of which is much less by weight. According to the results of assays, the average gold content in the ore is 1.88 gram per ton. The chemical consumption of this ore is shown in the table. The industrial value in the sample is gold, or other metals are contained in insignificant amounts and are not of interest for industrial scale, industrial production. The results of the sieve analysis are next. Ore is mainly represented by fine material minus 2.5 millimeter, the yield of which various size was 73%. It can be also be noted that the large class is enriched in gold, which indicates the presence of quartz with fairly large gold. This slide shows a distribution of gold for ore of various sizes. Laboratory bottle tests were performed for preliminary assessment of gold dissolution. Laboratory studies on cyanide leaching were carried out in a bottle agitator. The leaching modes were as follows. Mass of ore sample for each experiment was 300 grams. The ratio of solid to liquid is 1:2. pH 10 from 11. Sodium cyanide concentration equal 0.1%, and the leaching duration was 24 hours. During the leaching process, the concentration of sodium cyanide and the pH of the medium were monitored, and the reagent were added if necessary. According to the results, of the bottle test, we can say size of tiny that raw materials affects the degree of dissolutions of gold, which increases with decreasing size. From the crushed sample, an average 94% is dissolved, and from the crushed sample with a fineness of minus 2.5 millimeter, an average of 84% of gold is dissolved. In other words, decreases by 10%. However, the performance during leaching of crushed ore is quite good, which indicates the possibility of using heap leaching process. According to the results of percolation tests, the percolation ratio of water through the ore lower is many times lower than the regulated one, or without preliminary granulation is not suitable for heap leaching. The tests were carried out to work out the optimal pelletizing modes. Cement consumption was 18 kilogram per ton of ore. The picture below shows photos of pelletized ores. Then the pelletized ores are loaded into columns for leaching. The process heap leaching was carried out in a closed cycle: leaching, sorption, return of the working solution to the leaching turnover. Anion exchange resin AM2B was used as a sorbent for extraction of dissolved gold from productive solution. On next slide showed gold the solution required 31 leaching cycles for minus 25 millimeter and 32 leaching cycles for minus 12 millimeter ore. The total amount of productive solution to achieve complete leaching was from 2.19 to 2.29 meter cube per ton. Gold extraction into the solution according to operational data, excluding washing solution, was 72%. And the next slide showed cyanide consumption was 0.47 kilogram per ton. The leaching tails were analyzed and the balance was compiled. From all gold dissolved well during heap leaching, the degree of dissolution of gold according to the balance from ore with a size of minus 25 millimeter and 12 millimeter was 74.41% and 76.57%, respectively, with an initial gold content of 1.88 gram per ton in ore, and as gold content in the leaching tailings is 0.48 and 0.44 gram per ton. Conclusions. For industrial conditions of heap leaching, it is recommended to use the ore of the Bisu deposits with a size of minus 25 millimeter with a preliminary pelletizing with cement. The developed technology made it possible to efficiently process this ore and obtain gold in the form of marketable products, the doré alloy. Economic calculation confirmed the effectiveness of the developed technology. The technology has been introduced into industrial production. Thank you for your attention and goodbye.
Thank you for your presentations. Is there any questions to the presenters? Yes, yes.
Please, how do you store of enrichment sludge? I guess proposed technology is wet technology. So you have a great massive of enrichment sludge, and how do you store? Because this sludge contains cyanide. Я могу перевести на русский язык, если вы хотите. Скажите, пожалуйста, ваша технология, судя по всему, технология мокрого типа. Где вы сберегаете шламы обогащения? Они содержат цианиды, отходы обогащения. Где вы сберегаете шламы обогащения?
К сожалению, мы вас не слышим. Микрофон включен, но звука нет. Увы, без звука. Возможно, попробуйте ответить в чат. Чисто техническая проблема. While I was speaking, answered to the chat, I would like to highlight that most of gold deposits, the old gold deposits, are almost completely destructed. That this technique seems to be very prospective. The level of extractions almost 70% is really good. Thank you. We have an answer in the chat. Yes, Tatiana, the answer in the Russian. По окончании происходит выщелачивание и обезвреживание хвостов. Далее проводим рекультивацию.
Thank you for your answer. I need to translate English.
Yes.
The author answer me on my question that after processing, they add some chemicals to detoxification, and then as far as I understand, they had not any reservation for sludge, and after processing of gold urbanification, they made a recultivation of that territory only. Насправді дивно, що в них не зберігаються хвости збагачення, тому що вони мають, в принципі, достатньо великий обсяг мати, ну, у порівнянні, припустимо, з нашими шламосховищами, так, Ну, так, відповіли. Я
Але
в
ж,
чаті,
але ж
до
ви
речі,
бачили,
не
який
бачу.
там відсоток екстракції. Це чудовий варіант.
Да, але треба враховувати, що вміст золота в руді 1,88 грам на тонну. Ну, це поліметалеві руди. Ну, ми вже ведемо дискусію поміж собою, да, так як ми, в принципі,
One more
живемо...
questions. One more question. I have. I try to formulate in Russian. В нашем городе есть цементный завод, который производит большое количество различных групп цементов. Поэтому вот основной вопрос, почему вы именно для, соответственно, окомкования в качестве вяжущего материала используете именно портландцемент М400? Экспериментировали вы с другими типами вяжущих материалов? Я переведу, пока идет ответ, соответственно, попробую перевести на английский. Why was Portland cement uses as a binder for or lumping or granulations? Was there any attempt to use another binders, granulations, etc.? Thank you. We have an answer in the chat. Портланд цемент – это наилучший вариант, который не разрушается в процессе выщелачивания. А катыши получаются пористыми и прочными.
Answer of Awesome. The Portland cement is the best material to petalizing and with once using they have the best products without destruction and without any additional materials. Portland cement is the best material to petalizing. Для копування.
Thank you, Tatiana. Due to technical reasons, Kanali Nazar has no ability to answer in speech, but he can answer on your questions in the chat. I propose to use our chat both for the present and past talks. If you don't ask your questions due to some technical limitations, feel free to use our chat. Many thanks to... Yeah, yes?
Наш голова каже, що автори з Казахстану немає технічної можливості з нами спілкуватися, тому він свої запитання надавав у чат у письмовому вигляді, і у разі, якщо ви хочете задати запитання, то ви також можете написати для такого для подальшого спілкування.
Щиро дякую, Тетяно. Many thanks for your kind cooperations, and according to the programs, we need to forward our next presentations. I see Ivan will be presented by Ivan Sadovy, indicates as improvement of territorial special development. One more.
Congratulations to all participants. The topic of our research work, indicators improvement of territories spatial development. The main technical planning document is the Comprehensive Spatial Development Plan. Also, the calculation of the normative monetary valuation of land, which affects the amount of rent, and the calculation of land tax, will be carried out in the future on the territory of territorial communities. Take a look at the display. Fragment of the plan of land distribution by categories. Owners and users in the Pisichin Territorial Community of Kharkiv Region Pilot Project USAID Program on Agrarian and Rural Development Agro and Boundaries of Territorial Communities of Ukraine. There are projects that will use the territorial community as a unit for conducting land management works, inventory of land and natural resources during the planning of territorial communities' spatial development. Indicators of land resources use should be objective. The indicators need some improvement based on the characteristics of the territory organization. When planning the use of land resources, there are many project options, and which option to apply depends on the calculated indicators, which should comprehensively characterize economic activity. Currently, such indicators of land resources take a look at this slide, but the use of these indicators has both positive and negative impacts. The positives include the fact that these indicators are intuitive and can be easily compared. The negatives include the fact that all indicators do not take into account the spatial placement of objects, but only fix their ratio. It should be noted that indices that characterize the spatial relationship of land exist. Take a look at this. But all these indices are more related to the study of landscapes and to a lesser extent to agricultural activities. They also have their positive and negative sides of application. Indices of spatial development are evolved for many programs in different countries of the world: Poland, Spain, Taiwan, Norway, etc. Scientists investigated the possibility of using stability indicators to determine and measure the quantitative and qualitative spatial stability of territories. Economic activity is a complex ecological and economic process, and therefore we suppose it appropriate to consider the use of more complex indicators. The indicators, indices, and coefficients listed above are displayed as real numbers. For example, complex numbers that can more deeply describe various factors of planning or designing the land resources use. It is rather difficult to directly compare environmental and economic indicators. As a rule, ecological indicators are converted into economic indicators by calculating the amount of funds necessary to prevent the manifestation of negative natural and anthropogenic phenomena. Therefore, we suggest using the ratio of arable land to the entire area as an ecological indicator. As a technical indicator that affects economic costs, usage the ratio of the area of arable land contours to the perimeter. This indicator takes into account the spatial location of agricultural production various objects. We suggest making calculations in complex numbers, which will make it possible to combine various aspects of economic activity. The economic efficiency of economic activity depends on various costs, one of which is the fuel and oil cost and agricultural machinery depreciation. This is due to those idle runs and turns of agricultural machinery. Take a look at the presentation. Spatial indicators of forecasting the use of land resources are in the fact that there are dependencies on the shape of fields and working areas and various economic effect. Take a look at the presentation. We see schematic views of the arable land configuration with ecologically stabilizing lands. Yellow color shows conditionally arable land, green shows ecologically stabilizing land, purple shows positive impact on arable land. By positive influence we mean anti-erosion protection, creation of microclimatic conditions for the growth of agricultural crops, etc. All three schematic options have the same land ratio. Plowability is. Regarding the ease of working areas use, option A is better, option B is somewhat worse. Option C is not suitable for the use of powerful agricultural machinery at all. Regarding the impact on arable land, options provides the best impact due to the mosaic structure of the territory. option A has the minimum influence area. On the one hand, the high contour and fragmentation of the territory creates biological diversity, provides greater protection against wind and water erosion, and provides a stronger interaction between ecologically stabilizing lands and intensively used lands. On the other hand, high contouring worsens the use of agricultural machinery due to idle turns, increases the costs of fuel and oil and work time amortization et. Take a look at the display. To calculate the reference complex indicator, the recommendations of the Держкомзем State Committee of Ukraine on Land Resources were used regarding the ecological and economic substantiation of land management and the introduction of crop rotation. These recommendations suggest that the shape of the field be rectangular or trapezoidal, have parallel sides, an aspect ratio of 2, and be located, if possible, from north to south with long sides. The area of the field should be up to hectares. Field protection forest strips should be located along the boundaries of the working plots. Entrances to each land plot should be provided. Field protection forest strips should be located at an angle of degrees in relation to harmful winds with a deviation of up to degrees. With the help of the software, a reference project was designed and the sum of perimeter and area ratio was determined. The considered perfect conditions do not take into account the relief variegation of the ground cover et. For the calculation, we used an area of hectares with a plowing rate of. In scientific sources, researchers have come to a consensus that the rate of plowing is too high for Ukraine and should be reduced. But there is no agreed exact data on the size of the plowability indicator. Take a look at the presentation. Next, using our example, we calculate how much the complex number of the reference project differs from the corresponding options. We make a general conclusion which option is the best. For option A, the comprehensive assessment was I for B, I for C, I for the reference project. Next, we find the distance between the points, the length of the corresponding vector. Consequently, we can say that the closest to the standard and recommended option is B. Difficulties and issues that need to be refined regarding complex indicators using complex numbers as opposed to real numbers makes comparisons difficult. We can compare only the real and imaginary parts. To avoid this problem, we suggest developing a reference assessment object. That is, a project that will take into account all existing recommendations from the ecological and economic side. When evaluating project options or different projects for the offered indicator, we will compare them with the evaluation of the reference object. How far is our indicator from this point? The offered evaluation of design and planning solutions index will make it possible to evaluate both the ratio of lands and their spatial placement in an integrated manner. The use of complex numbers will make it possible to implement new analysis approaches in land management to find regularities in the influence of spatial placement on the economic activity results. For territorial communities, an important success factor is the use of arable land as the most effective agricultural land. Finding a balance between economic benefit and ecological stability is a key task of the territory spatial planning. The offered approach application requires a significant amount of relevant information. Unfortunately, there are certain obstacles regarding access to the characteristics of the land resources used. Modern software and land remote sensing data allow highly complex analysis. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Any questions to the Ivan and his team? No, at least I have some questions as mathematics in the past century. Really, when we have some additional measures, axes, tensors, etc., we enrich our data. For example, at the moment, according to the United Nations, the Ukraine is the most mined, Ukraine is most mined. Bombs and other damages related to the war. How do you think if we need to include another axis, maybe J, maybe K, maybe quaternion, related to the issues of our security in the as a part of your methodology, or you use that only two axes to any other parameters which can be used now and in the future. Your opinion, please.
Перекласти?
Можна перекласти.
Так я можу перекласти, власне кажучи,
Ну,
я
давайте,
перепрошую.
бо ви так довго казали, я тільки суть.
Так, я перепрошую. Ну, власне кажучи, дуже приємно, що ви застосовуєте дійсно, як то кажуть, ну, такий двопараметричний вимір для кожного із параметрів. Дійсно, ми можемо розширювати це, як то кажуть, для кватерніона, до будь-якого тензору тощо. Але цей варіант виглядає достатньо обґрунтований. Ну, водночас питання. Через те, що значна кількість земель в Україні наразі є замінованою, вона містить там залишки вибухівки тощо. Чи доцільно уводити нову вісь, наприклад, йод, робити гіперкомплексним відповідний параметр для того, щоб додати питання безпеки для будь-якого параметра земельної оцінки? Чи ви можете увести усі питання, власне кажучи, ну просто якийсь додатковий фактор, пов'язаний з безпекою, з степенем порушення земель унаслідок бойових дій? Ну, є думка про те, що він є настільки значущим, що його необхідно ураховувати усюди. Але цікавить ваша думка як фахівця саме у цій галузі. Дякую.
Дякую. В нашому дослідженні ми поки що не вводили додаткових параметрів. Ми координували зусилля на економічних та екологічних. Прозореність, вона більше екологічним, а оця контурність, вона більше економічним, тому що є холості заїзди та розвороти, форма поля впливає на витрати. Ми поки що розглядаємо ці два питання. Безпекові не вкладали, але думаємо, що в подальшому навіть вони будуть впливати, тому що була тенденція на зменшення розореності земель. А у зв'язку з цими подіями, з замінованістю, вона фізично, фактично буде зменшуватись, тому що ці землі будуть виводитись. З іншого боку, контурність теж буде змінюватися, тому що тут там замінована, тут не замінована, і форма поля, і обробіток теж буде змінюватись. Ну, поки що не параметри. Хочемо оцінити цю динаміку на цих наших, як рухатись далі.
Also answer that the main attention, the decision was depend on plowing field characteristic, plow and contour. So modern reality, such as war efficiency, more effects don't add in their research, and they to plan to in next investigation research on this question too, because this territory after mines, after bombing, will be except of is using so only plowing field was used in their research.
Thank you, Tatiana. And one more questions. Any recommendations in Cadastrian in the finished form are related to the territorial communities, to the management of territorial communities, etc. Yes, I finish and I will translate in Ukrainian himself.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Are you plan to implement your methodology as formalized recommendations for the heads of territorial community, for cadastral, etc.? Моє питання стосувалося того, що було б дуже доцільним відповідно розроблену методику довести до рівня затвердженого документу, який би міг би, технічна інструкція, який би мог користуватися наші кадастрові агентства та інші структури, пов'язані, зокрема, з управлінням територіями, там для голів територіальних громад тощо. Чи ви плануєте, відповідно, розробити ось такі конкретні рекомендації використання для нефахівців, для тих, хто буде це реалізовувати? Дякую.
Дякую. Так, ми плануємо. Зараз проводяться і створюються плани територіального планування громад, комплексні плани. І зроблено декілька пілотних проєктів. І на цій стадії виявилося, що не вистачає повної інформації у цих саме планових показників, саме еталонних показників, тобто до чого треба рухатись. І от в рамках цього ми один із удосконалень – це довести до рекомендацій, щоб потім колись будуть складати ці проєкти, а їх дуже багато будуть складати, у нас багато територіальних громад. І коли вони будуть замовляти і складати ці комплексні плани просторового планування територіальних громад, ми будемо намагатися, щоб вони вже були або в рекомендаціях, або в підручниках. Тобто,
Те, що треба. Дякую.
Also said that they is planned to make and implementation reference indicator and offer this reference indicator to different normative documents such as cadasters or maybe textbooks, etc. So that is their plan.
Many thanks for your answers. Any other questions? No questions. My apologies. We working with some Latin. It's some effect of on-site translation. The next year we will try to make a really synchronizes translations and try to work strictly according to the desired time limits. Many thanks you one more time, and we need to move to forward. Our next presentations will be presented by Ivan Lakuda or Lakida. I'm sorry, I probably don't use the correct form of your surname. The name of presentation: Biomass Potential of Forest Residues in the Forest of Ukraine's Carpathians as a component of regional green economy. I will try to start this presentation. One moment.
Dear colleagues, we are pleased to present to you the results of our research titled Biomass Potential of Forest Residues in Forests of Ukrainian Carpathians as a Component of Regional Green Economy. This research has been carried out by a group of researchers from the National University of Life and Environmental Sciences of Ukraine. This research topic and the research itself is important since forests act as an important component of ecosystems, especially in the mountainous areas. In these areas, forest management should be multi-vectored, and it should balance environmental protection, socio-economic development of local communities under special conditions of mountainous ecosystems. Under this setting, it is necessary to transfer to the sustainable development paradigm. Also, given the fact that in Ukraine, in general, the efficiency of energy use is rather low and the energy demands are growing, it's necessary to say that forests are able, and they actually should play, an important role as a source of renewable energy. Security and economics-driven reasons play a special role under the current very uneasy martial law conditions. And also, we have to remember that in Ukraine, especially in mountainous areas, there still are settlements without central supply of natural gas, and therefore they have to rely on other sources of energy. A couple of words about the forests of Ukrainian Carpathians, which you can see marked with a green arrow on the map. The mountain forests of Ukraine, they are a part of Eastern European mid-latitude ecotone. They do represent a resource-rich forest management hotspot in a developing country, which Ukraine is. The Carpathians are located in 4 administrative regions, namely in Lviv, Ivano-Frankivsk, Chernivtsi, and Zakarpattia regions. These forests occupy an area of over 2 million hectares. They feature a growing stock of over 580 million cubic meters, and they also have a substantial monetary value, as well as they do perform vital and inherent functions of mountainous ecosystems, which are, in fact, very important for the society. The forests of Ukrainian Carpathians are dominated by such tree species as European spruce, European beech, and also a substantial part of silver fir is present, which actually is an indigenous species for the Carpathian region, as well as, since the mountainous forest ecosystems are very diverse and rich, there are many other tree species on that territory. Speaking about the distribution of area of these forests by administrative regions, we have to note that in Lviv, Zakarpattia, and Ivano-Frankivsk, there is approximately even distribution of mountainous forests, and they take up an area of approximately 6,000 to 7,000 hectares. And in Chernivtsi region, the share is substantially smaller, as well as the area, which you can see on a chart on the right of this slide. To carry out the research, we used the following sources of data. First of all, we used the data of state forest account. Also, we used the reference materials on growth, yield, and biological productivity of forests of Ukrainian Carpathians. We also used the database of sample plots, which we further applied for development of information support for this research, and also we used some statistical reference data. So, speaking about the biomass of crown branches in forests of Ukrainian Carpathians, you can see that on the table on the slide, it's depicted that the highest density of biomass of crown branches can be observed in the Carpathian region. This is partly due to the species composition and growth conditions, partly also due to the peculiarities of forest management, which of course have an impact on growth and formation of forest stands. Also, you can see that for different tree species, the patterns of formation of crown branches and their biomass is very substantially substantially varies. So the biggest share of crown branches clearly is observed in European beech dominated stands, and in general it's due to the biological peculiarities of these tree species. So it's necessary to say that we have the results of energy value of three biomass components. In terms of crown branches, the results are depicted in the table on this slide. As you can see, there is distribution of the energy value of crown branches on wood of these branches and bark of these branches, and then you have in general total wood over bark. This is the previous two fractions combined. So again, since it was, as it was said earlier, European beech, due to its biological peculiarities, has the biggest share of crown branches among the dominating tree species in Ukrainian Carpathians. Here you can also see that both for wood, bark, and wood over bark, the energy value of dry matter of life biomass of the crown is also the biggest for the European beech. It's also necessary to say that European beech stands, when they reach an age of 110 to 120 years, they feature the proportion of crown branches of about 20 to 25% of total stem stock. For spruce and fir, this figure is substantially lower, about 10 to 15%, and it's necessary to underline that currently more than 80% of logging residues remain on site after logging. Some of them can be used for heat production without harming the environment. Next, coming to the energy potential of forest wood residues biomass in the forest of our research region, we have to say that for our research region, which consists of 4 administrative regions, the biggest amount of the highest energy potential is characteristic for the Carpathia region. And also we have to say that Ivano-Frankivsk, Lviv, and Chernivtsi regions, they feature approximately the same or very close energy potential of forest wood residues biomass. And it's also necessary to say a couple of words about the prospects for further research and further research needs. So first, and probably the most important thing that is very beneficial for forest management planning is stand level assessment of energy potential of wood residues for mountain forests. It actually really benefits a lot to forest management planning because on a stand level basis we could, if this is done, then on stand level basis we could move forward with planning of different management activities which would be aimed at production and obtaining this resources put into energy use. So currently the assessment that we have presented to you, it exists in this current state where we have assessment figures and values for our research region with subdivision into administrative regions, oblasts. This approach is good enough to go down from this level only down to level of districts. But then what is really needed and where we see a future perspective is to carry out this kind of assessment on a level of single individual stands. So this would be much finer resolution and would be much more beneficial for the purposes of forest management. And also we would have to underline the necessity of incorporation of this stand level assessment to the existing system of forest management planning, which is carried out by the Industrial Association Ukrdержlіспроект. And it would be done in a way that after collecting field data and processing them, the next step would be calculation of energy potentials and including them into the projects of organization and development of forestry enterprises. So then when this data is needed, it would be readily available. Speaking about the conclusions, I would say that the majority of them were reflected in the course of my talk. So I ask your permission not to stop on them in details. And if you have questions, you're welcome to ask them. Thank you for your attention.
І вам дякуємо за доповідь. Колеги, будь ласка, які будуть запитання? Тоді, якщо можна, питання задам я, а може надалі хтось іще придумає. Значить, хотілося б спитати, наскільки от складним, витратним у обслуговуванні є обладнання для отримання енергії от з цієї біомаси, про яку ви говорили. Тобто, зрозуміло, що обсяги великі, можна задіяти, але от стосовно того, як цю енергію отримати, тобто наскільки це все складно і дорого.
Дякую за запитання. В мене одне єдине питання є.
Одну секундочку. Дайте, будь ласка, шанс перекласти, а потім уже відповідь.
To try to translate. Was a question about difference and cost of equipment, about price of process to make this biomass for fairing, maybe really fairing of these wood residues after logging. So, what is the price?
Дякую за запитання. В мене є питання до вас технічного характеру. Давати відповідь українською чи англійською?
Якщо можете англійською, то будь ласка. Я, в принципі, розумію, я просто говорити не можу.
Добре. Окей. So, let me split this question in two parts. First of all, before answering it, I have to underline that I'm not a technical specialist in the sphere of producing energy from wood biomass. My specialization is rather assessing the possibilities, assessing the present resources. And this was the main focus of our research, of the team that was actually recently presented. So speaking about the difficulty of maintenance and then cost of maintenance of the equipment, I would say that in general, since the energy density which is contained in wood biomass and other types of vegetative biomass, which is substantially lower than, let's say, of coal or oil or other fossil fuels, we simply need to burn more of that to produce the same amount of energy. So since we have to process bigger amount of matter, then we need to maintain the techniques more intensively, and of course this would cost more. But speaking about this is the second part of my answer, speaking about the availability of resource which is available locally, which is demanded locally, and which does not need big expenditures for logistics. And the way actually of transforming wood biomass into energy, let's say heat energy, there are, there is a huge variety of ways to transform it, starting from very simple and finishing with really sophisticated ones. But in general, I would say that it's competitive in terms of economical point of view, because before the full-scale Russian invasion, we've had actually very close to Kiev, in Ivankiv. This is northern part of Kiev region. We've had a biomass power plant, which was producing electricity out of wood biomass. And it was a commercially successful enterprise for years. Unfortunately, I don't know the fate of this enterprise after the invasion, but as far as I know, it was actually severely damaged. So I wouldn't say if they continue working or have they stopped, but since we have these cases, successful cases, this proves that, proof of concept that it's actually possible and it's feasible and it actually should be done. There is a demand and it's possible to supply it from the locally available sources, which are not contributing to increase of concentration of greenhouse gases and which do not require to buy fossil fuels from abroad. Why not? Why shall not we do it?
Thank you. Can we? We live in a steep zone, so my question about volume of wood residue. What need volume of wood residue to real efficiency such production?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I would say that for the steppe zone, speaking about the potentials, it's like, an additional information for everyone, but we cannot actually say that the potential, the minimum potential is like this. This is like the bottom line, and everything that is above this we can use. Why it is so? Because according to the currently available most advanced methodologies of assessing of this potential, there are 5 types of this potential, starting with theoretically possible and ending with socially conditioned. And the further we progress from theoretically possible to socially conditioned, the more and more limitations we add for this theoretically possible potential, which includes all the biomass. So speaking about the steppe zone, of course, it's necessary to say that the proportion of forest stands and other sources of wood, which mainly perform other functions than producing energy out of it, is very, very high. And as far as I know, the vast majority of forest stands have some special protected categories which prevent them from being cut. And even if they are cut, to maintain or enhance their environmental functions, there are many other demands for that wood than, let's say, just bioenergy. So for steppe zone, of course, this is not viewed as a main use or main possibility to cover the demand in electricity. But speaking about the steppe zone, there are other sources which are in sector of agriculture. and which
Yeah.
also have a very big amount of commercially feasible and sustainable cases which have proven to be able to work all over the world. So maybe there in steppe regions, it's better to shift to other sources of biomass.
Thank you. My question was in context of annually volume of lodging. It's what I don't know, lodging forest every year for such a commercial project. It's really a great amount of.
Yes, I would agree. And since in Ukraine in total we roughly harvest about 10 million cubic meters annually, a little bit more, a little bit less, depends on the year, depends on the territory. But in general, what we have underlined in this research, that if we turn our eye into the possibility of using the resources for energy production, which actually now stay on the ground after logging has been done, like branches, tree tops, different logging residues. And also, if we turn our eye into making use of low diameter wood, which originates from thinning, when the forest is young, some management activities have to be taken to actually maintain it. And some wood can also be sourced from there. So this wood has no commercial use, and it mainly stays in the forest. So this is a resource which is readily available. It's only a question of making proper chains of custody, logistic chains, and installing the proper equipment. So in general, of course, if we would say that we would like to use highly valuable stem wood for producing energy, this would be nonsense. But except for valuable stem wood, we have many other tree parts and fractions which originate from different stages of logging or wood processing, which can also be a source of biomass and which can also be used for the purposes of producing energy. And one of these sources have been highlighted in my talk. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer.
Чи будуть іще запитання до пана Івана? Чи відпускаємо? Рухаємось далі. Добре, тоді, значить, дякуємо вам дуже за роботу, за відповіді і рухаємось далі. Наступна доповідь у нас буде присвячена дослідженню озер, їх потенціалу рекреаційного і не тільки. І ми запрошуємо до виступу Василя Корбутяка.
Hello, let me to present our research about landscape modeling of lakes for cadastral purposes. Such information about the lakes, especially for the Nature Reserve Fund, should be based on landscape geographic principles using modern geoinformation systems. We presenting our approach to developing integrated cadastral landscape model of the lake with limnology parameters, which should serve as a basis for the recreational nature use, monitoring and geoecological certification of the reservoirs. The model protected nature area of this research is Noble National Nature Park in Ukraine, which is located within the physiogeographic region of Volyn-Polessia. The landscapes of the park are characterized by an extensive hydrographic network, swampy wetland complexes, sand dunes, and green massifs of forests. The park includes 12 lakes, and among them is Seredny Lake. The development of the cadastral landscape model of Lake Seredny included field instrumental research, in particular high-precision echo sounding of the reservoir, research into the composition and thickness of lake sediments, the study of the species diversity of above water and underwater plant communities, and determination of the temperature regime in the summer. The hydrometric work was carried out in May 2021 using a Humminbird echosounder. The water level during the measurements was recorded using GNSS RTK receiver. SRTM radar survey data were processed in the RGS desktop software complex to set the boundaries and configuration of the catchment area. Probing of the bottom sediments of the lake was carried out from the ice in winter with a spoon-type geological drill. The basin of Lake Soredni was formed among real dominant morphological units of the landscape presented on the slide, and the typical landscape view we can see on the photo. So the dominant morphological units are hills and dunes with gentle slopes covered with lichen shrub, pine forests on hidden podzolic, sometimes crushed stone and sandy soils. Also, there are elevated areas between rivers complicated by karst funnels covered with lichen, moss pine and beech pine forest on slightly podzolics, sometimes clay sandy soil. Also presented undaunted areas between rivers and local closed mounded depression covered with various grass, several green moss and other types of vegetation. And the lakeside narrow depression and lake depression of irregular shape formed on sapropel deposits. So that morphological units are typical for our landscape. Based on the results of echo sounding data processing, we built a bathymetric map of Lake Soredni. The central part of the bed of the lake basin has a depression of elongated shape of more than 3 meters. The average depth of the reservoir is 2.4 meters. The area of the lake is all 0.2 square kilometers. Other morphometric and hydrological parameters of the lake are given in the table. The developed three-dimensional model of Lake Soredni is an additional element of the visualization of the lake basin microrelief. The differentiation of the relief of the basin by steepness of the slopes is important in further development of legend of the landscape map. In particular, the determination of the processes of accumulation or transit of mineral particles and dead remains of aquatic organisms. The relief of the lake basin affects the distribution of areas and volumes of water masses of the lake. The area of the littoral zone of the reservoir with a depth of up to 3 meters is the largest and accumulates about 95%. Based on the results of bathymetric surveying, landscape field research and computer processing of materials, a digital landscape map of Lake Soredni was developed. Typical landscape elements shown on the slide, and there are two main types of landscape. The first one is littoral aqua subtract on sandy muddy, peat swamp sediment and sapropel. And the second one is sublittoral profundal aqua subtract on clay limestone and organic limestone sapropel. The main information about complexity of natural aqual complex of the Lake Soredni are collected in the table, and the biggest aquafacies for subtract 1 is the littoral accumulative transit algal carbonate sapropel associations with a homogeneous temperature regime in summer, and for subtract type 2 the biggest is aquafacies sublittoral accumulative and transit accumulative clay limestone sapropel with heterogeneous temperature regime in summer. As the conclusions, we can say that the main hydrological and morphometric parameters of the lake basin were calculated, and the landscape map of natural aquatic complex was created, and its landscape metric analysis was carried out at the level of aquatic tract and fascias. The research revealed change in the level regime and shoreline of the lake caused by the of the last 6 years and life activity of beavers. The created integrated cadastral landscape model of the lake with limnology parameters should serve as a basis for the recreational nature use monitoring and geoecological certification of the reservoir of the Natural Research Fund. Thank
Шановні колеги, прошу запитання, тим більше, що всі автори присутні. Таке рідко, коли буває, коли весь колектив присутній, то будь ласочка.
Please, some questions to the author.
Тобто знову я.
Я можу, якщо...
Добре, тоді ви перша, Тетяна Миколаївна, я потерплю.
Так, я спочатку англійську, а потім перекладу. Please tell me, do you determine the ash content of sapropels in research lakes? My question relevant to using of lake sediments. Sapropel is a type of sediments as a fertilizer. Я питаю, чи досліджували ви зольність ваших сапропелей? Ну, сапропели – це ж все рівно різновид донних осадків, так? Всім відомо, що, в принципі, ці сполуки використовуються як добрива, і вся давня історія Єгипту, Дунаю, таке інше, це є використання сапропелей, донного мулу, да, для там, сільськогосподарських цілей. Чи ви визначали зольність і, відповідно, можливість використання як добрива сапропелей?
Так, це буде пан Віталій Мартинюк.
Дякую за запитання, шановні колеги. Перепрошую, можна українською? Звичайно, що ми сапропелі досліджуємо, бо донні відклади, в тому числі і сапропелі, вони є дзеркалом цього підводного ландшафту. І, власне, диференціація аквальних фацій в озері досить така скрупульозна робота, і потрібно в першу чергу визначити, які види сапропелів, їхня потужність, склад і таке інше. Ми використовуємо по інших озерах і фондові матеріали геологічних експедицій, а на даному озері, на жаль, ми зольність не визначали. Ми просто визначили видове різноманіття донних відкладів, в тому числі і сапропелів, їхню потужність, і це, власне, послужило основою для диференціації на аквальні підурочища і нижчі морфологічні одиниці аквального ландшафту, аквальні фації. Але це слушне запитання стосовно зольності, але це озеро чи кілька озер гідрологічного заказника, який перебуває в межах Нобельського національного парку, там не можна буде проводити видобуток цих сапропелей, і ми акцент робимо просто на рекреаційне використання. Але дійсно сапропелі можна використовувати і в якості органомінеральних добрив, можна використовувати в рекреаційній сфері, але тут необхідно проводити ще додаткові обстеження.
Thank you. Дякую за відповідь. The answer of authors was next. The content of ash don't research, but this type of lakes is a part of a national reservation. So any industrial commercial activities is impossible, so only recreational activities and maybe other, only recreational, yeah, recreational activity can use for these lakes. Thank you.
Ну і все ж таки тоді моє запитання, яке стосується того, що ну от ви досліджуєте озеро, да, певне, тобто будуєте модель на підставі от різнопланових таких досліджень, але наскільки ця модель буде релевантною в часі, тобто наскільки вона буде стійкою? Може суттєво щось в ній змінитись там за рік, за 10, чи не доведеться вам частенько перероблювати ваші моделі?
Добре,
excuse me. Question depend on type of model. This model is current state of lake, but what about future? Lake is a living system, and it can be such situations that in future you need to make a new model for a new contour of lake or new conditions of lake. Please.
Дякую за запитання. Дуже слушне запитання. Щоб побудувати ландшафтну модель озера, передусім необхідно спочатку створити батиметричну модель. Так ось ми використовуємо високоточне ехолотування. Ну, мій колега більш стосовно високоточного ехолотування може більш предметніше сказати, але власне мікрорельєф озерної улоговини є цією передумовою для диференціації на аквальні підурочища. Наскільки така модель може бути довготерміновою, питання стояло. Ну, ми можемо сказати, ну, найближчих там до 40 років, це ми впевнені, що вона нічого не зміниться, якщо не буде антропогенного втручання. Тут потрібно врахувати аспект седиментаційних процесів. Процес седиментації протягом 1 року відбувається 1-2 мм, а при сучасних змінах клімату, можливо, там до 3 мм, це можна прорахувати. Тобто протягом там 10, 20 чи 30, 40 років ось ці sedimenti, тонкодисперсні відпади, вони не будуть так дуже сильно нагромаджуватися, але особливо зазнає антропогенних змін літоральна зона, тобто ось ця мілководна зона. Коли ми проводили польові дослідження у 2021 році, травень місяць, ми побачили відступ від урізу води до 6 метрів, тобто берегова лінія зазнає дуже великих змін. І дуже часто так трапляється, що в першу чергу оця літоральна зона поступово переходить вже у приозерну терасу. І для багатьох озер ми бачимо, що вже вони переходять з озера, скажімо, там оліготрофного типу, там поступово в процесі ландшафтно-озерних сукцесій переходять в озерно-болотні комплекси, коли десь від 70 до 90% озеро просто заростає. Але так, ще раз хочу підкреслити, до 40, до 50 років ці параметри суттєво не зміняться.
Дякую.
Відповідь була дуже довго. Я так, самий sense. In general, answer of author contain of time of proposed presented model, and in the idea, proposed model will relevant to 40, maybe 50 years, but the biggest problem maybe with coastal line and littoral zone, because is a common trend to such lakes is a trend to from a lake to bog, but current process of sedimentation about 2 millimeters per year.
Tatiana have some technical issues, but
Ви почули кінцівку, бо в мене телефон телефонував і, можливо, вибило інтернет. Чули мене?
Yes, we hear that to eliminate an anthropological factor, we need for Skynet, etc. But really, this is a time-independent model, no, at least in the average perspective for the 40 or 50 years. Many thanks. Any other questions? No other questions here. Thank you all to all of us. It's a really exciting talk for us. Despite all issues, our workshop is a kind of cooperation, ecology, chemistry, and biology, and all of our chairs work on in the department of chemistry and methods of teaching, and in the department of I'm sorry, Tatiana, your current botany and ecology.
Now, yes, and chemistry too.
Oh, and chemistry, in our science faculty of Kryvyi Rih State Pedagogical University. Thank you one more time, and we need to almost finish our last presentations. It will be Pavlo. Could you see what in the program our 8 presentations should to be?
Так, у нас дійсно залишилась остання запланована доповідь. Я сподіваюся, що до нас зможе підключитися таки автор, один із авторів, хоча б наразі, на жаль, якісь, можливо, технічні проблеми. Доповідь буде стосуватись соціальних та екологічних підходів до класифікації видобутку мінералів, і основний доповідач Марія Курило.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kurila Maria from Taras Shevchenko National University of Kyiv, and I'm present our common work with Sergei Payuk and Yulia Tkachenko on the topic social and environmental features in domestic and international mineral resources classification system. So we propose to analyze and to compare our domestic practice in resource and resource estimation and our domestic main feature of our classification and compare with international standards, not all regional international, but the main basic international standards, and it's important for us because of we are implementing some of the standards to our domestic practice. So let's start. Why we compare this classification and why we talk about social and environmental feature in this classification? Because we have a lot of risks in mining industry, in exploration industry, and this risk. And these risks change every year, but some of them we can see in every list of every year, but some of them appear right now, and it's not a surprise for us, but it's very important for our forecasting of mining industry and to take into consideration this main risk in our classification system, because of this is a main basic reason why something goes wrong with our mining project, with our exploration project, and we have to analyze it and to forecast it exactly right, as we can do it today. So, for example, we have 10 business risk and opportunity for mining industry and metal industry. This is composed by Ernst & Young. I think the same list of risk have KPMG and PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I propose to analyze it for list of Ernst & Young and to implement it in our classification. And this is a very important point of this report is environmental, social, and governance is the main risk factor for mining industry in our current year. We hadn't this factor in previous year, but it appear not today, not this year. We can see some point of social licenses to operate in mining industry early before, but the next year and the next year it wasn't so important as today. So we have environmental and social risk as geopolitics and climate change, depending on license to operate. Main of this risk is have relationship between each other. But the first place today is environmental social risk. So it's the main basic reason why so many mining projects have interrupted in previous period, and this company, in this case Ernst & Young, forecasts that it will be the most important point of risk management for this exploration and mining project. So every exploration and mining project depends depend on their resources and resource factor. And our resource and resource estimation we conduct with some requirements, some rules of our regulation. We can use our domestic regulation, we can use some international regulation, and we can use regulation of other states if we have to do it, if our project, for example, locates on this region, or some of stakeholders are from this region. So it can be some cases when we have to use not only our domestic regulation, but also international and some national, regional regulation from other states. Here we can see some basic classification and estimation system, some codes, international codes and our domestic codes that we as a rule use for solid minerals and for hydrocarbon resources. This is Australian Joint Ore Resource Committee system and classification. The next appear first European reporting standards, and then we have we can see our Ukrainian state classification system of our state fund of resource resources, and here some development of this previous system, petroleum resource management system, and European reporting code, Norwegian Directorate for Petroleum Resources, Canadian regulations, South Africa, and other from other region and country that had already implemented some of these standards. And in every of this regulation, we can see or we cannot see taking in consideration these social and environmental risk and factors for resource and resource estimation. Here we have we did some comparison of basic feature for this classification system, and we chose not all of them because some of them are very alike. So we analyzed a United Nations framework classification, KRISCA, with JORC code, and two classification system of hydrocarbons resources, and at least our Ukrainian classification system. So some of this system we can use for all type of minerals and hydrocarbons and other natural resources. This case of UNFC, because we can see here hydrocarbons, minerals, nuclear, water, and some types of unconventional minerals and other type of natural resources. KRISCA code, KRISCA template we can use only for solid minerals, and we cannot implement it for other resources, excluding some type of geothermal resources, because right now they want to implement their classification and their template for other natural resource project. These two only for hydrocarbons, and our classification system for all type of minerals and other subsoil resources, not natural but subsoil resources. And here some point of object and person who who can carry out this estimation and classification. And here we can see main feature of classification. Only for UNFC, we can see on the first place environmental, social, economic viability. In other system, we can see level of geological knowledge and confidence, some project status, feasibility, some modifying factors that combine mining, processing, metallurgical, marketing, and other feature of project. We can see also some uncertainty, and as a rule, this uncertainty we can implement with environmental, social, and economical viability. But in direct way, this feature is there is only in UNFC classification system. In our Ukrainian classification, we use as a rule the basics. Is level of geological confidence and some stage of technical economical development, and only in indirect way we can see here some social and economical feature and peculiarities of our project. So also I want to just a moment. Sorry, but in our articles, full articles, also you can see some period and dynamics where this feature were implemented and why by period. But you are welcome to read it if you want. In conclusion, the most common feature of classification is geological study, but social and environmental risk become basic for implementation in mining project. Social and environmental viability is used in direct way only in United Nations framework classification, and it took place more than 10 years before, partly for social factor and partly in part of environmental factors. In other international standards, as well as in our domestic classification, environmental social governance criteria is taken only in indirect way. So this is our future way to improve our classification system. So such development can take place in two directions. Inclusion this criteria in direct way is basic feature, and use an improvement of existing methods of resource valuation, taking into account these features, this peculiarity in indirect way, but in calculating of every value of our project. Thank you for your attention.
Дякую. Колеги, які будуть запитання до пані Марії? Так, тобто, мабуть, знову почну я. Значить, я не знаю, наскільки це питання буде коректним, але дуже цікаво, тобто різні класифікації, вони враховують соціальні екологічні ризики при впровадженні різноманітних гірничих проєктів. Наскільки ступінь цього врахування залежить від того, яку саме сировину будуть видобувати? Тобто, одна справа, коли мова йде там про залізну руду, наприклад, да, і ми враховуємо і соціальні, і всі інші ризики, в першу чергу. І інша справа, коли, можливо, це будуть видобуток алмазів. І тоді трошки змінюються пріоритети. Тобто таке можливо, в принципі?
Я розумію.
Чи ні?
Розумію.
Зараз, одну
Дивіться.
хвилиночку, дайте, будь ласка, хвилинку перекласти моє запитання, бо у нас дубляж англійською повинен бути.
Does the degree of consideration of social and environmental risk for the implementation of mining projects depend on type of raw material?
Thank you for your question. In a perfect way, we want to have such case when our social and environmental evaluation depends on mineral types. That's true, but in reality, very often we deal with any dependence with mineral types. For example, some local community cannot agree with any type of mining, even in case of sand or clay or carbonate rocks, even in case of uranium, iron ore, or manganese. So in reality, we deal with cases in independence on mineral types, but some peculiarity and mood of local community.
В цілому перекладати?
Дякую. Ні.
Добре.
Так, можливо, ще якісь запитання?
Є запитання у Івана Лакиди. Іван Петрович.
Дякую. Скажіть, будь ласка, мені англійською знов-таки чи?
Та ні, давайте українську, а потім людині.
Добре, у мене ось питання скоріше в розвиток попереднього. Якщо, ну, зрозуміло, що є, скажімо, там певні труднощі з отриманням доброї волі, так би мовити, локальних громад, місцевих громад на проведення видобутку тих чи інших корисних копалин, тих чи інших, чи використання тих чи інших ресурсів. Мені, як лісівнику за освітою, я можу сказати, що фактично ситуація тут з лісовими ресурсами часто дуже схожа. То на вашу думку, чи є якісь інструменти, за допомогою яких можна було би все-таки цей процес отримання їхньої згоди і, відповідно, в подальшому це би менше спричиняло конфліктів, якимось чином, ну, що, як би це сказати, спростити чи зробити більш імовірним те, що цю згоду, їхню і добру волю буде отримано? Дякую.
Thank you for your question. Sorry.
Could you offer any answer? What a local community can give you on agreement to mining depend on raw and in general, have you any answer? Have you any
let me help you.
Thank you for this question.
I'm sorry. Let me just clarify this a little bit and specify. The question originally is about the tools which you foresee that may exist or may be available for use for better getting this agreement from the local communities, or maybe facilitating some negotiations in course of which their agreement and goodwill to use these resources on their territory could be
I see. Yes, thank you, because it's very very important question for our domestic practice. Mining project implementation, and it's not my thought. It's not my decision or solution of these problems, but in this year I learn such course of European Institute of Technology in sustainability in mining project, and they recommended the main two ways to facilitate this decision with local community, local people. That's maximum clarify our decision and our activity, and do it in long-term period. So these local people have to understand and imagine all type of our activity and all our decision to mitigate this such result of mining industry, and there is no guarantee that we will have this social license, but it can be much better way when they understand their bonus, their profit, and it's very good when we do it in a long-term period. So they don't think that we want only to take some very big profit from them and get away with any responsibility of our results. So that's not mine, but we have some recommendation from European institution to do it, and such a solution have to be in such very big report, much bigger than we do it right now in our environmental assessment, in several times bigger and deeper and understandable for local community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I to give you question? You know, we live in such region, Kryvyi Rih mining region, and really any mitigation action from mining company, from iron ore process company, we can't see in our region, and my colleague can agree my words. So what need to ask people, what need to ask and what need to say people, what people must do in such situation. Really, we have bad air, we have waste in our water. At the beginning on our meeting, I said about quality of water in our river. 7 grams per liter salt in river. It's a result of mining. What say can be in such situation?
You know,
it's a result of mining.
It can be result of mining, but it cannot be not only result of mining. It's really true not only for Kryvyi Rih region, and I think that that's questioned not only what you have to do with your water or with your mining company, because local people also, not only your local people or mine local people, have to understand all opportunity from mining industry and all risk from mining industry. And really, I think that's really it's easier to do from the beginning of mining project. So in your case, it's very it's not good case, because your deposits and your mining enterprises are mostly exhausted or on high point of mining activity. I know it because I was working in Kryvyi Rih, and I know the situation. But you know, it's very good. It's very good example, not only in iron ore, but for example, in our all devices, or mobile, or another devices. For use it, we have to extract so many metals and minerals, and the very simple questions, if we, all of us, agree to deny any activity with our device. Everybody says no, not only my mobile, but your mobile your mobile want half of all metals, type of metals in our earth crust. So I think that all side, opposite side, mining companies, local people, and all stakeholders have to be understandable and have to clarify what they really want from every project, because for local people, mining project, that's not only waste, not only that's not only waste, and that cannot be that can be good and profit and have a lot of opportunity. But question in technology, extractive technology, processing technology, and other ways that we deal with. So that's really a difficult case in Kryvyi Rih region, but that's a question for mining company. That's and they have to invest in new technology. They have to invest in some environmental solution, and but it's really difficult solution, because a lot of sides, a lot of stakeholder in this problem. So I really think about it.
Yes, really, what they should get and how they get out of us in our city.
Thank you for your question, of course, but really it's a I don't know, maybe imagine idea, because you said about profit. Yes, profit have these enterprises, but not all people in this region. This profit for only some people only, and usually in Kryvyi Rih, not in Kryvyi Rih. So it's a really a very difficult question for us, for our ecology, and for people who live there.
I understand, but I no, you don't know where I'm living now. So, and what problem in Kiev with some industry, but that's not about profit only mining industry. You have to understand that without profit, we haven't any salary. We haven't any budget fees. So it's we have to see not only local or regional problem and look for a solution for this problem. We have to understand the scale of this mining industry. Because of we have dependence from fee to state budget from our not only iron ore but oil and gas industry, and this is salary for our teacher, for our most of our Ukrainian people. So that's also a very big problem.
Я так розумію, що технічні проблеми.
You have a remark or a question?
Sorry, it's a short remark. I generally agree with Tatiana, and you know, it's not possible to also to not agree with the speaker, because you know, it's a complex question. It's a complex question for people who are located in Kryvyi Rih and who really suffer from these consequences, externalities of activity of mining industry and other enterprises. This is not an easy life, and we have to understand that and respect that. But on the other hand,
but
where would Ukraine be without also
for a real vision of this problem, need to see our open pits, our stocks of empty ore. So really, but it's not only a Kryvyi Rih problem, it's all mining region problem, big problem. When and new project about mining enterprises, about processing, I mean or benefits processing. It's project don't use new technology in Ukraine, I mean. Only old or dangerous with flotation, with floater agent using, etc. Really, it's a big ecological, social, and then economy problem.
Absolutely agree. There is probably no simple answer to this question. No simple answers to difficult questions.
We have a quite simple answer. According to the Sustainable Development Goals, our production must, not should, must to be environment friendly, and we are people a part of environment. Definitely, the new environment friendly technologies are expensive. But no, As is, thank you. I'm thank you for all of us and our speaker, which initiates such productive discussion. At the moment, our program is almost complete, and we have the last part of the program. I think, session closing and farewell. Pavlo Pavlovich, Tatiana Mиколаївна.
Ну, в першу чергу хочеться подякувати всім, хто взяв участь в нашій конференції, в нашій секції сьогоднішній, ну і в конференції взагалі, всі, хто дотерпів до її кінця, зрештою. Ну і те, що незважаючи на всі проблеми і технічного характеру, і всі ми знаємо, яка у нас зараз величезна спільна проблема в країні, що ми все ж таки знайшли можливість і все ж таки зібрались і провели цей захід, провели, вважаю, з користю для нас всіх. Сподіваюсь, що в наступних наших заходах ви також приймете участь, залучите своїх колег, і ми тільки будемо розширювати і кількість учасників, і географію учасників. Дуже цього б хотілося би. Ну і не для перекладу, я думаю, не треба точно це перекладати. Хотілося б сказати, що це у нас 4-та конференція. Коли ми тільки першу конференцію проводили в 2020 році, запланували, одразу стався локдаун. І з тих пір у нас всі 4 конференції, да, Сергій Олексійович, проходять якби не завдяки, а наперекір. Но я все ж таки сподіваюся, що 5-та, ми її вже плануємо, але 5-та конференція вже буде не в таких умовах, що все ж таки, можливо, нам якось вдасться на ювілейну 5-ту зібратись очно в більш зручному форматі, коли ми не будемо залежати від техніки, від наявності інтернету, від безпекової ситуації зрештою. І через рік приблизно ми зможемо реалізувати більш звичний для нас, для всіх формат, поспілкуватися вживу і не менш цікаво, ніж це було сьогодні. Всім дякую за участь.
Dear participants, we thank all of you for participation in our section of conference. We have covered all the points of the agenda. So we hope to see you next year on the next conference, on the 5th our conference. So thank you very much for your attention, for your time, for your participation. Thank you.
Thank you for the great event.